Chris Hanna and Christopher Tanner are the voices of the Cellar Door Skeptics, a podcast based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And when they're not doing the podcast and working, they keep themselves busy by being secular parents. Christopher has 4 children, 2 of each, while Chris only has 1 child but has another on the way. And when they were both involved with the atheist analysis, the 2 Chris's were given the award of Outstanding Atheist Activist of 2014 by Arlene Marie at the Michigan Atheists State Convention there. And if you're interested, you can see the show of Atheists Speak Up on YouTube, and they're on episodes 92 and 98. Just search for Michigan Atheists or Atheists Speak Up, and you should be able to find it. But without further ado, the 2 Chris's.
Thank you, everyone. Hopefully this isn't too loud. I didn't test this mic before we started. I'm Christopher Tanner. This is my co-host, Chris Hanna. We've known each other for about 1 year longer, technically, than we've been doing shows together. Yeah. So essentially, how we met, just a real quick background on the show, is we met through Arlene, actually, I guess back in 2014, 2013. And he was interested in doing blogs, and I was just doing background information and research for other podcasts. And I thought, hey, why don't we start doing something together? And therefore, that's kind of how we born Cellar Door Skeptics. So we want to thank everybody here tonight or this morning, I guess, for joining us. It's very exciting. I'm very happy this isn't an 8 a.m. convention and that I got to sleep in a little bit this morning. So we want to thank Joyce for having us. It's an honor for the 2 of us to be back again. We are very excited to be here. We enjoy the local community, and Michigan Atheists has always been like a second home to us. We've come out to a couple of different events. We both live on the west side of the state, so it is a little bit of a drive.
He's almost to the water.
Almost to the water, yes. I live in Zeeland, one of the most conservative towns on the west side of Michigan. So if anybody knows Zeeland, you will know. There you go. See, you'll know that the religious upbringing in that town is very strong. They're Calvinists and Christian Reforms. Literally within, I think, 2 blocks from my house, there's 4 churches. If you go 4 blocks from my house, there's 7 churches. And within a 1.5-mile period, there's 10 churches. So I can literally walk and actually just go to church anywhere I wanted. And they're all varieties. They have Baptist, like I said, the Christian Reformed, and definitely Calvinist. As we begin the convention, we kind of want to talk about parenting. So I picked a picture. This is my daughter. Now this is a little bit older picture of my daughter. She is my fierce warrior. So I have 4 children. I have 2 teenagers, ironically, and then I also have a 9 and a 7-year-old daughter. Chris Hanna here has 1 daughter.
She's 2.5, and I got another one in 4 weeks.
Yes. So yes, his wife was not super happy to let him off the leash. So if he runs out the door, it's because she's gone into labor. So essentially, like Marty had said, we started with atheist analysis. My upbringing was very religious. I grew up in a very conservative Baptist upbringing for the first part of my life. I spent a lot of my time in church. I went to church 4 times a week. I was also part of the student body at my school for the religious upbringing, which just happened to be a non-denominational Christian school. My parents did Bible studies with us twice a week in the house, and then every dinner we spent talking about what we learned at school for the day. And of course it wasn't about math or science. I mean, those were important. But the big thing that we learned about was Jesus. How can we get others to come to Jesus?
I didn't have any of that.
I've studied the exact opposite.
Yeah, my upbringing is basically a dual religious household, Judaism and Presbyterianism. But it was all as done lightly. And pretty much what we had was the holidays and family time together, but it was pretty much basic. And I thought the experience that we've had between basically talking about our lives and the differences therein are kind of a major dynamic on the show. My concentration is more towards science and engineering, and his concentration is explaining all of the things that I'm glad I never had to learn.
We used to do a segment. We don't do it as much anymore because it kind of gets a little old. We've kind of transitioned the podcast a little bit more towards activism. towards having the conversation, towards, like he said, science education, and politics has been a big one for us, especially, no offense to anybody that voted for Trump in here. I don't know if anybody did, but that was a big thing for us, especially on the west side, is how can we fight that mentality of some of that conservative Christian people that were infiltrating our lives?
It's just anger, just trying to get, if everybody can get along a little better and have nice dynamic conversations, that's what we're trying to do on the show.
And so one of the old segments that we have on the show, and we do this about once a month, is crazy, and I won't say the swear word, but crazy crap Chris used to say, or used to believe.
Yeah.
For example, I used to believe in canopy theory. Anybody else ever got raised on canopy theory? Yes. So canopy theory is, as a child, we learned that the way that the flood worked is that the earth was covered with water in a heavenly sphere, and then when God decided to trigger the flood, he opened the floodgates, and all the rain came down. We actually believe that. We literally had scientific presentations at my church that literally explained how this was possible. Now, I'm 35 now. I don't remember exactly what it is, and I emailed the old pastor who happened to be in his 70s, and he did not have any interest in sending notes.
I always imagine it like the War of the Worlds, Aliens, where you could see the dome as the alien was attacking. And so basically I learned things about that. That they had belief that there was a turtle underneath the flat earth and a variety of other things. And so whenever we talk about that, it's usually something that's impressive. But I try to bring, like I said, math and physics to the situation, and trying to build up a proper immune response. So learning how to deal with some of these things, create some strong antibodies, because I'm going to be navigating that basically in shaping the mind of a small person that I've never done before. And I've never had to battle any of that because I didn't actually need it. And so learning things from him, hopefully he learns a little bit from my math and physics, but I've been learning more from him than I believe I teach him myself.
Yeah, so one of the topics, obviously, in this convention is secular parenting, right? And so we got together and we kind of talked about how can we have a conversation about secular parenting. We're not experts. He has I don't know what degree he even has.
Mechanical engineering.
He's whatever that is. And I have a degree in business management. So obviously we are not experts such as Dale is over there. But we have had a lot of experience. We have spent a lot of time researching, and we do have distinctive background. So we thought, how can we create a presentation where we can talk to each other about what we've learned? The two of us have learned a lot. Like, in fairness, I came out about the time I met Hanna. So I was religious for the first 20 years of my life, and then I kind of went into what you would call like a spiritual upbringing, right? And I did the whole karma thing. I believed in karma. I believed that there was a turtle. I believed all sorts of crazy things because I didn't want to let go of that God fixture. Now, in fairness, I went out and I partied, I had kids, I got married, got divorced, bought a house, lost a house, bought a second house. I did all these other things that really didn't pertain specifically to what we were doing, in terms of religion. But when I lost my second job in 1 year, and this was about 6 years ago, I ended up saying, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is religion. And that whole prodigal son thing came back, and we started going back to church again. And then my wife came up to me and she goes, all right, so you came to church, I'm going to give you this podcast. I want you to listen to this podcast. So I listened to a podcast. Within 1 week, I had zero interest in the church. I pulled all my kids out of anything that they were participating in, and I said, I can't believe how blind I was.
That evil internet again.
Yeah. And so that was the big thing for me, was I learned that I could be wrong. And then I had to learn, what are we going to do in the future with our kids? What are we going to do? Because secular parenting for me was something I had never been involved in. I'd never known what to do. I didn't understand that there was a way to parent your kids without God. I had no idea. But then I became very infuriated, and I decided to say, hey, why do people want to instill religion in all of us? Why is that a thing in society? Why can't you just keep it to yourself? Why can't they just do those things in their own homes and let me live my life the way I want to? And as my kids got older, you start realizing some of the religion that's injected into your schools. It's amazing because, for me, I never saw it until I came out as an atheist. And all of a sudden started doing the research, and I'm saying, hey, that's religion. For example, we had my son's in choir. They decided to do a song at Christmas time called Silent Night. Anybody know Silent Night? Hopefully. Yeah. They decided to do a song called Silent Night. They didn't just have the kids sing. They literally had the whole auditorium. They stopped the presentation of the school. They had the whole auditorium stand up. They asked everybody to stand and sing along, and they passed brochures out. So here I am as an atheist, sitting here just fuming. I'm ready to spit fire. That's how angry I am. And I had no idea how to contain that. Luckily, with the pairing of Hanna here, he has kind of helped me change how I see things, how I interact with people, and he helps temper my flame towards the world. If you listen to the podcast, you'll every once in a while you'll hear me go on a rant, and you can tell because that Hanna will be like, and then he just kind of stops, and then he'll let me go on, and he'll try to cut through, and then I'll just walk right over. So if you listen to the podcast, you can actually see just like that. You can hear me
jump in and just like, hey. We're going to kind of get back on topic here because he'll be 30 miles off to the side. And it's just basically what the whole plan for this thing here is for me to rein him in when he gets into his life experiences. And because I'm new to this. I'm new to the secular parenting. My daughter is only 2.5 years old. And so we're still at this relatively early formation stage where I'm just teaching her words. I'm teaching her how to behave and not steal. I guess that's a pretty good one to start with. But it's just been a really great experience, and I see him with his kids, and I see the things that he's dealing with as they get a little older, because he has a pretty wide berth of ages. And so I'm learning from him on that, and we just kind of brainstormed, had some really cool ideas. But my first thought was just how we can use some of these life lessons to generate a new generation of rationalists, a nice successive group of people to succeed what we thought was coming after the European Enlightenments. So dealing with something like the Walden 2 paradoxy, if you're familiar with the book, basically that you can never create that perfect utopian society without bringing a little bit of the old one with you. And so the idea is that we can try to create that new society and those new children and the new philosophies. And it's going to be a little bit of that old stuff there, but we could treat it like genetics. And when you hear about repressed genes, we have tons of repressed genes in our systems, but they've been turned off. We know they're there. We acknowledge them and deal with their existence, but we've been able to evolve past the point of needing that for whatever reason. It was part of our evolution. And so I try to treat our philosophies and teaching children the same way. If we can create this new inoculated society that could know what we dealt with in the past, pay attention to our historical failings, and maybe we can move forward, and then as evolution is wont to do, we can create a new society that eventually will be open to just about everything, and maybe get past some of the older things that we don't really like in their society nowadays.
So, yes, thank you. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was our upbringing. There's two of us. We're very silly atheists, as you can tell. We like to have fun on the podcast. We don't take ourselves super serious. Every once in a while I get on a little serious rant. But for the most part, we enjoy what we do. This is kind of a hobby type thing for us that we've kind of taken and tried to blossom into something that A, lets us vent steam, and B, gives us an outlet to help try and be as good of activists as we can. So I grew up, like I had said, ultra-Christian. Hanna was raised by a Christian, an atheist, and a Jewish person, sorry.
Yeah, it's just all of the things. There was no specific. It was very open, and it was I would say more universalist or Unitarian. It was pretty enjoyable. I got to experience life in a synagogue, and I went to church with the grandparents and things like that. So they were always competing ideas. And my initial thought was that they basically, I couldn't tell the difference between it was Charlton Heston as Moses, and then it was Jesus, the bloody Jesus on grandmother's wall. And then I had Santa Claus and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. All of these things were equally valid and absolute in my eyes. So in the end, it basically came down to, I was born into what I like to call an excruciatingly middle-class household. My family basically realized that I was a general bipedal human. Everything's functioning. We'll go ahead and invest some time and create something that would be I guess a worthy successor to our eugenics and furthering our society. And so with that, we have We have a kid who loves radioactive ooze, and who loves the idea that the holy books are only picked up twice a year, and even then, when they're picked up, it's gifts are the concentration of the entire event. Because people used to be jealous. I used to celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas, so I would get 8 days, and then I would get one more day of like a grand finale, and it was always fun just explaining to some people that I still have some of those old prayers in my mind, but I was agnostic before I knew really what that meant. In college, of course, that place where we have children that are learning all kinds of things that parents are trying to shield you from, and I didn't really know what that was until I graduated college, and I basically realized that I was just an angry progressive. I didn't know why I was mad. It's something that I just picked up from the events of 2000, September 11, 2001, and I think it was March 20th, 2013. Yes, that was the inauguration of the Iraqi war. So, the beginning of the end for approximately 500,000 Iraqis. Those kinds of things made me just an angry, crunchy millennial. And so Arlene was my first piece out of that. I had found Michigan Atheists and sent her an email. And I just said, is there anyone in West Michigan? It's like anybody I can talk to. And he apparently did the same thing. And so she said, well, I got this other guy.
So
good luck.
Because when I came out, all I had was online podcasts, online websites. American Atheist was one of them. All I had was that. I didn't even know what the CFI was in Michigan or what Michigan Atheist was. And so when you did a Google search, the first thing that comes up for Michigan Atheist is Michigan Atheist. So ironically enough, that's exactly how it happened. I emailed her almost within, 2 weeks probably of when he emailed Arlene and said, hey, what do we do? So she sent me some tabling material, sent him some tabling material, some bumper stickers, threw a bumper sticker right on my car, and then we kind of went from there. Mm-hmm. But with my background, a lot of what I learned as a kid, you sit there and you go, hey, all the stuff that we learn, is any of it valuable? Is anything instilled in us, even through our religious parents? And one of the big things that was instilled in me was skepticism, ironically enough, right? You would not think that would come from a Christian in terms of that. Now, my father never wanted me to be skeptical about religion, but he said, hey, let's be skeptical about everything else. So, for example, we would sit in the car. I think I was 15 at the time. We were in the car, and my father is a die-hard conservative GOP Christian. I mean, he's never voted other than Republican in his whole life. He's never voted independent. He doesn't care. For him, he's a one-voter issue. Taxes and anything that has to do with raising taxes, he can't stand. So I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh, of all people. So, now it'll date me a little bit, but that was a talk show at the time. And my father listened to that religiously. So we would be in a car coming home from church, Rush Limbaugh. We'd be going to church, Rush Limbaugh. We would be driving home from a school event, Rush Limbaugh. I mean, I swear, I don't even know if, maybe he taped it. I don't know. I don't even understand how Rush Limbaugh was on that many times. No idea. But I remember they were talking about affirmative action. And I remember that my dad was like, yeah, I don't believe in affirmative action, and Clinton's ruining the world. And I looked at him and I said, well, why? Why do you feel that way, Dad? Well, that's because that's what Rush said. Well, Dad, you told me never just to believe anything. Well, you should just believe this guy. Well, hold on a second, Dad. You want me to just believe just this guy, but you don't want me to, you want me to question everything else like evolution. But you want me to just believe this guy. I don't understand why you would want me to do that. And he says, well, I don't know. I'll tell you what, I'll let you figure it out on yourself. Let's just not talk about it. Okay, worked for me. Same thing happened with the war. My dad is pro-war. Don't ask me why, but he loves war. And so when I was in high school, there was a thing we were learning about the Vietnam War. And I came home and I said, I'm not going to register to, join the army. He's like, you have to do that. You don't get a choice. And I was like, I'll go to Canada then. He's like, well, then I'm going to kick you out of my house. And it's like, well, why? Why do you want me to go off and fight and kill people? Do you even believe any of these things happen? Now, this is all even before 9/11 happened. So you got to think, this is what he did after 9/11. We won't even talk about that. That's another 50-minute presentation. I don't want to take anybody else's time off. But one of the things that he instilled in me was be skeptical. So even though all my upbringing and everything I cannot stand about religion, there was still a few nuggets of truth. The other thing that kind of happened to me too is my mom had been training me to be a pastor since I was a child. Literally. She thought I would be a pastor. Now, I don't think in here, I mean, I guess we are technically in somewhat of a religious environment, but I was at the service here last night, and it sure as heck was not religious. So, so the irony here is they know right now that I'm standing in front of a bunch of atheists talking about my upbringing, about them, and I'm not talking about it in a light that represents Christianity the way they want to.
And I didn't do any of that. Basically, like I had said before, is that we found common ground, and you probably can't tell, but I'm about 85 to 90% deaf. I've been wearing hearing aids my entire life. That's what this little doohickey is here. It's a Bluetooth device that allows me to hear on cell phones.
Yes,
But
yeah,
but I've been wearing hearing aids my entire life, and I write about some of the difficulties and things that you learn when missing a sense, and a sense that's uncommon, so not a lot of people know. You can lose your sight, and it's still considered a societal norm. It's a little tough for children. They still do name tags and things of that nature. But the hearing loss is something that society is still kind of learning to grapple with. But the reason my handicap's important, and this deals a little bit with evolution, so a tiny life that I got brewing in my wife's belly right now, it's the difficulties in things like genetics, so proteins misfolding, and I said bullying is also another issue. And I know that's a bit of a stretch, but I'll get to it in a second. But you didn't think you were going to escape some science from me, so... The whole conception process starts with two pieces of biological material, genetic strands ready for recombination. That recombination process involves the male and female sex cells equipped with 23 chromosomes each, and they're ready to pair with the prerequisite of 46 total. This means that unless your cousin is of a different species, you can't keep saying that he's missing a few chromosomes.
I don't know, you never met my family.
Yeah. But in the end, the result here is a series of incredibly unique and complex genetic variations in our sex cells. This is also championed and vilified as part of the random nature of our basic evolution. And it's something that gives our potential offspring something truly to be proud of, that they actually exist. It's something that they survive, just the basic processes. But what I was worried about in all of this is there's this thing called a non-homologous cell. It's a chromosome that is irregular, unsimilar, or it's paired incorrectly. And these are the things that cause deficiencies. These are the things that cause diseases. And my hearing loss is nerve damage, and they don't really know why. And so something to worry about. I don't have to worry about the original sin, but I do have to worry about the science that I understand. And so I was worried about that first hearing test. They give you your child a hearing test right when they're born, and they have a very competent process, and they can really tell whether or not they can hear. And so these different non-homolog cells or chromosomes pair with other ones, and then they create a misfold. And that can create cancers and many other issues, but also these genetic mutations could be those things that are necessary to create that super baby. You may have that next evolved, but it might be a giant leap. We don't know of some of those situations, but that same thing, that useful tool, can also be what causes problems and issues with their lives. And so what interests me in this particularly is how we can turn those switches on and off. And that's something that society and CRISPR and a lot of really cool things have been doing, but we don't have a way to know what's going on particularly, and so I still have to worry about that. It's getting better, but I still have to worry about whether or not this is something that would be genetically transferable. And so far I made it through the first one, the first stress test, and my first daughter is completely and totally abnormal. She's beyond anything I ever expected I would experience in my life. So with my next daughter, we'll see if I can get myself dressed up like my sister and I, and my parents in the center there for Halloween, and we'll have ourselves some fun.
So upbringing is everything. You're able to use your upbringing no matter what your upbringing is, right? So if we have our upbringing, we have how we came. How do we change? How do we develop? How do we continue to move or maintain who we are without losing everything about our past? One of the big things I learned is it's okay to change your mind, right? I came from a super religious, conservative Rush Limbaugh background. I don't listen to Rush Limbaugh anymore. if I listen to a conservative talk show host, it's for research for the show. I do read a lot of conservative blogs or newspapers, but I do that in an effort to understand the other side. I don't do it because I agree with it. I actually probably read more conservative blogs than I do liberal ones. And again, it's not as meant to say, hey, I want to change my mind to that mentality. I just want to ensure that, hey, I don't ever want to be caught off guard again. I don't ever want to feel like I felt 5 or 6 years ago where all of a sudden I go, hey, my whole upbringing was just gone. I didn't understand what the world was. I remember sitting in my chair crying for a day because I thought I was going to go to hell. And then Hanna goes, you're not going to go to hell. There's no hell, Chris. So I was like, if there's no God, why would there be a hell? Well, that's a really good point. So one of the things that I learned is it's okay to change your mind. And again, another example of that kind of is, in recent times, I used to say the R word. I won't say it today. I used to say the R word. I never thought it was anything wrong with it. It's how I grew up. I grew up where they didn't care about PC language in any way, shape, or form. My wife very slowly corrected me for about a month, 2 months, and finally said, look, if you want to understand and you want to be the change in the world, if you want your children to see that change, why are you continuing to say something that's politically incorrect? Why wouldn't you go and understand it? So I did some research, and I went out and I reached out to that community and I talked to them. And you know what? I was wrong. I had to admit I was wrong. Now it's funny because my older children, I have the two 15-year-olds, 2 teenagers, and I have to now correct them. And they like to use the excuse, well, you know, Dad, you used to do this. You used to say that word. I know. Well, let me explain to you. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to say that. They don't want to hear the explanations as much because if you ever listen to me talk on the show, you can understand here we are. And, you know, I spend a lot of time talking, obviously. So one of the examples that we have is how do you change and how can you admit that you changed? The other thing that we did is I like to teach my kids is be a skeptic first and foremost. That means questioning me. Now, there's a certain point where I don't want them to stand there and question me indefinitely, right? You know, I don't want to all of a sudden, you know, hey, you know, you need to go clean your room. But let's have a 20-20 conversation about it. Now, I can tell you my 9-year-old will do that. She will sometimes sit me down and say, hey, let's have a conversation about that, Dad. You like to talk. Let's talk about why my room should be clean.
Sometimes I do the same thing on the show. We need to have a talk, Chris.
So.